to ignore Prince Harry's appearance in this picture. He looks rather broken. 4 years after Megxit, Prince Harry looks worse for wear. It doesn't seem like anything has gone well for himself and his wife. And this latest stunt in Jamaica, you almost feel the pain of the tensions going on behind the scenes, the challenges that I'm sure they are facing. But of course, it is a disaster of their own making. And I started thinking, is Harry really as miserable as he seems? Or is this just a moment in time? Because there are all moments where we look angry, sad, frustrated, what have you. And it's just like this little brief second. But with the cameras on Harry and Meghan quite a bit in public appearances, I thought to myself that I would do a little deep dive. I went through 200 plus pages of Getty images, trying to see if we could see the point where Harry just doesn't quite smile as much anymore, that the smile just doesn't even quite reach his eyes much anymore, because we definitely saw that in Jamaica. So today's video is just going to be a little different than what I normally do, because this is going to be a picture expose, because as I look through thousands of images of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, what became clear is that there is a difference between Harry's pre-Meghan and post-Meghan life. Yes, initially when they married, he was on cloud 9, but yet you see the downfall where the smiles are just not quite as easy to come by in pictures. So we are going to talk about this today, but if you guys haven't been to Royal News Network, my name is Brittany. I provide y'all compelling royal commentary, and usually you can see my bright smiling face in these videos, but today, because this is going to be a little different, we are doing just pictures, because I think that explains things a bit better. I mean, I am playing a little video of myself here so you can get an idea of what my beautiful face looks like, but not today. So we are going to go over this important topic. And as well, I also just want to let you guys know again about a trip I have upcoming to Scotland for any members who are interested. It's a great time to have great friendships. I have a couple of people who went on my Germany, Austria trip coming on this trip as well. So I'm so excited about that. And it's a great time to make friendships, to travel around the country, just get an idea of what Scotland is like. So if you guys are interested in that, there will be a link down below in the description box. I cannot wait, it's in mid-July. So if you're thinking about it, we still have some early bird pricing. So if you are interested, feel free to check that out. Okay guys, to start off with, I just wanted to go overall and say we don't have that many pictures of this event, which I found really, really odd. There seemed to be a lot of cameras there, yet not a lot of pictures made it to the wires. And so I have a small group to choose from, but what I noticed in particular about Harry is that he just didn't really smile. His smile was more of a grimace smile. And then there were moments too where it just looked like he was pretty miserable. So in this first one, they're looking like they're going to pose with someone. She's wearing red, and he just looks sort of dazed in the corner there. And I don't know, not gonna read too much into it, but it just was a little odd. And they're all like this. They're all like this. And here they are, some gentleman is leading them further into the event, and Meghan's, desperately clasping to his hand because she can't seem to do anything else. And he's just sort of looking serious, looking down. It's just an odd picture. Again, the pictures we got from this event are super odd. And neither one of them look particularly happy in this picture. This is, I believe, after they posed with the CEO of Paramount. And again, these are on the red carpet, and I noticed it in the video too. We do finally have a smile from Harry in this particular picture. You can actually see his teeth, because what I noticed and what I tried to confirm, but yet really couldn't confirm, is I had a theory when I was looking at these pictures, which was that Harry never shows his teeth here in any of these smiles, really. And I feel like, I was like, well, Harry does smile and show his teeth. And sometimes too, when he's meeting a fake German royal, I mean, the smile is broad. It is across his face. He looks so excited to be hanging out with the fake royal Max. It's a huge smile from him, yet we're not getting any of this here. And it's just a little strange. And I just kept trying to look at these and figure out, okay, is he happy? We also have this other one. She's walking up the stairs, and of course he must be, the hand can never leave her. They must always be holding hands even If it's super awkward, they're still doing that. And so again, this is just a super awkward exchange. And we do have, again, this weird picture of Meghan with her hand behind her because, again, she can't walk without trying to find Harry's hand. For such an independent woman, she is remarkably dependent, if you can say that. So these pictures, again, I just found rather odd. And the only other pictures that we got were from Getty Images. And again, you get the same thing. Harry, in one picture, sort of has a smug smile on his face, yet it just never really reaches his eyes. And the same in the group shot with the Prime Minister. It looks like he's trying to maybe adjust his mouth or something, but you never really smiles. And then even in the theater, you get the same sort of smile that's just not quite there. And I did do a little bit of research on it because I was looking through all the pictures, and I did notice sometimes in official pictures, he does not have a smile with his teeth. And yet, when you go back through and look at some of his past images throughout his time as a royal, that smile came more readily to him. When I was looking through the pictures, I thought, okay, I see that smile a lot more where it reaches his eyes and he smiles with his teeth. Now in official pictures, for some reason he doesn't, but in general pictures, I just saw a lot more of it and I just couldn't help but wonder why. Why? Is he miserable as he looks? And I think the honest answer is probably yes. And here's the reasons why I think Prince Harry is miserable. Despite the loved up display they put on, I don't think really a ton of it is real. I've always been of the opinion that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's PDA, half of it is performance, half, if not more, is somehow performance. Because most normal people just don't touch each other that much, even couples, because it almost looks frantic if she's not desperately clinging to him. And while PDA is fine, Catherine and William do it from time to time, there is an air of professionalism when it comes to royals. They generally just don't do it that much because they're in a professional setting. If you were married to your husband at work and you were walking around holding hands constantly, touching each other constantly, kissing sometimes or something like that, it would just feel a bit odd to people and it would just make them somewhat uncomfortable because there should be a difference between public and private. And yes, royals have this sort of weird thing where they're both public and private in a lot of ways because your private life does become something that you have to show the public. So most women don't walk out of the hospital and show their babies right after they give birth. That just doesn't happen. But when it comes to royals, that is part of their relationship with the public. And so there is a public aspect to their private life. But Harry and Meghan just seem to take it a bit too far, and all the journalists noted it. I know Valentine Lowe said that was one of the first things he and others noted was how clingy they were. And I think part of Harry's misery comes from the fact that he must perform this as part of his relationship with Meghan. She demands this PDA. We see this at the UN. Take a look at this video. Now, what you'll notice is that he very clearly drops her hand. He doesn't want to hold her hand. But what does she do? Not only can he not hold her hand, she must drag his hand across her lap and two-hand death grip it to make sure that he does not forget that he must be always touching her. It's just odd. And so I think sometimes the struggle, I'm sure, for Harry comes that he's supposed to perform this loving husband act that she demands, yet I don't think he's feeling it anymore. And you'll also notice in the video I showed of them at the Jamaica event, he had put one of his hands in his pocket and she grabbed and pulled it out of his pocket. I mean, she didn't necessarily grab it, but you could tell he knew the gesture was if she kind of flits his hand or whatever, he must take his hand out of his pocket and give it to her. And again, there's nothing wrong with couples holding hands. It's not what I'm saying, but I think it's weird that it seems to be something she can't allow him to not do. He must always be holding her hand, touching her in some sort of way. And you'll also notice that she is actually holding his other hand, turns around and grabs that hand out of his pocket. So no matter what side she's on, once she drops one of his hands, he must grab the other one. Again, it just looks odd. And I think sort of the demands that we see from it from time to time, like in the UN, like in this even little video here, show that sometimes he wants to have his own personal space, and yet it seems like he can't really have that. And that was always part of the problem I saw with their PDA, is at some point, you won't feel that anymore. You can do that in the honeymoon period, but at some point when life is tough and you have to actually work or do different things, you probably really won't want to do that quite as much anymore. Yes, there is a time and a place for it. But again, Harry and Meghan, it was always very, very overly performative compared to what other royals do. So much so that was noted by the press. But Harry and Meghan have made it such a key part of their brand. You almost feel like it's getting more frantic. And it's gotten to the point where one time Meghan was holding Harry's hand and there were photographers and they're getting out the car, and she almost she drags him into a police officer because she's charging ahead and he's behind. And so there's just this performative aspect, I'm sure, that is getting frustrating to him because he knows it's not real. And he feels the fakeness of it, but yet he must do it because she demands it. He wasn't this touchy-feely as far as we're aware with Chelsea Davy. And so I think this is a reflection of what Meghan wants, because Meghan's always the one seemingly looking for his hand. And sometimes too, because of their height difference, it's not probably all that comfortable for her to hold his hand. It's just this weird thing that they've done from the beginning that just hasn't really stopped. And it's just seemingly gotten worse. The other act of misery I think we see here is that Harry has been totally and completely emasculated of every single facet of himself in many ways. He is basically her accessory. He is her handbag. He is there to be in front of the camera with her so that she can get a moment on the red carpet, and then she drags him to the next location constantly. And I think if things aren't going well, she's not particularly happy. And I think oftentimes his misery comes from the fact that she ain't happy, and he has to constantly placate her. He has been doing this since the very beginning of their relationship. What did Meghan do when they first started dating? Harry, the press is being mean to me. You need to make the press stop being mean to me or I'll leave you. That is, I think, incredibly nasty thing to do to somebody, and he was desperate enough where he went along with it, but now he has to continue it, and it's not working anymore because I don't think she's happy. And I think that's making him miserable because she's constantly not happy and he's constantly doing things to try to make her happy, and yet she's still miserable. And I can't imagine the frustration of that because that was always going to be the case. Meghan Markle is never going to be satisfied. She can't be queen. And so she's just never, ever really going to feel that satisfaction because she will always be second fiddle. And I think the thing too is when it comes to his role as a royal, she completely diminished that. And she diminished that so much, she diminished him, because look at this picture right here. I will tell you right now, this picture is 1,000% wrong in every stretch of the imagination, because in any royal event, the blood royal goes first every single time. No matter if it's a man or a woman, the blood royal goes first. Meghan is only there as an accessory to Harry, but he is now an accessory to her in this moment. And she did this constantly throughout their relationships as a royals. And it's so disrespectful. I mean, she even went and introduced herself to the King of Morocco before Harry. Again, massive, massive diplomatic royal faux pas. The blood royal always goes first. And as this started to become what Harry had to do, I mean, she taught him very early. There's this very famous clip of Harry and Meghan and Charles and Camilla walking out for Charles' 70th birthday sort of celebration in the gardens of Buckingham Palace. And they're going out the room, and Harry's about to walk out in front of Meghan, which he's supposed to do. He is the blood royal. She taps him and immediately walks ahead of him. And yes, you could say it's chivalrous, but is it not also respectful as a wife to respect the fact that your husband has this role in the world, which means that yes, he has to go first. It's not there to diminish you as a woman. It's there to be as reflection of him as a royal. That's what it's there to do. And so that Meghan just totally disrespects Harry in every single instance of this cannot be ignored. And I'm sure that has led to a lot of misery because he was led to believe to a certain extent that when they left the royal family, things would get better. And this was I think the other part of what makes Harry miserable is because he went along with Meghan's scheme for Megxit. And he may say it was his idea. It wasn't. It was her idea. Because why are they in Hollywood? Because it's where Meghan Markle always wanted to be, was Hollywood. And so they left the royal family. They set up this whole life. And Harry was under the impression that she was this phenomenal, incredible actress and they would do amazing things in Hollywood. And that hasn't happened. In fact, they've gone from pretty much failure to failure. And it doesn't seem like any of that is going to get any better. And they really only have themselves to blame. And Harry, in a lot of this instance, only has Meghan to blame. Why? Because she thought that she could do this. She thought that her little role on Suits would result in massive Hollywood success and that she was always on the cusp of Hollywood stardom, but it just never happened for her because she just needed this little push. Well, there's thousands and thousands of starlets like that. But the reality is for the vast majority of people, and I would throw Meghan in this bucket, you never had it to begin with. She never had it to begin with. A royal title doesn't magically change that. Ergo, they are stuck exactly pretty much where they were when they left for Megxit. They are, I think, desperate for jobs, desperate for the future. They don't know what they're going to do. They're getting massive pressure from Netflix. They might be trying to hook up with Paramount, but I'm sure nobody is taking them because they're all like, well, your success rate at this point is 33%. And so that's failing. And it's cool, that's failing. They've only had one successful project, which was their reality TV show trading off the royal stuff. Other than that, nothing's been successful. And so there's a lot of misery, I think, from this belief, this delusional belief by Meghan and Harry's co-delusional belief that if they left the royal family, if he followed her, everything would work out for the better. And it hasn't. It has not in the slightest. And you could say as well, some of Harry's misery as perhaps giving up everything about himself as a man to please her. Because we all know, and even People magazine confirmed it, and they have the mouthpieces often of the stars, is that Meghan runs that household. Nobody else runs that household but Meghan. Harry's just living there. And he's probably lost a lot of what he considers himself because it's all been concocted now by Meghan. So what do we notice in these pictures pre-Meghan and post-Meghan? Like I said, you notice that he tends to smile a bit more. And I noticed this through a lot of the pictures I saw, and I noticed this as well in some of the initial pictures of when their relationship was first beginning. You saw the smiles, you saw the excitement, and it reached his eyes. But things started to change around the birth of Archie. Now, I saw some of these similar pictures before, but I feel like things really started to churn around Archie's birth. And I think that was the first indication for Harry and some of his misery is that he's not going to be that important anymore. He's coming to realize that his son, although as important as Archie is as a human being, which of course he is, in the grand line of succession, Harry and Meghan are not that important. They were told, according to Oprah Winfrey, and I do believe this is true, they were told, well, your son's not going to get security. And I think that devastated Harry because it was a recognition not of the fact that he was such a risk, he needs this massive security apparatus, but no, a reflection of the fact that Harry is the spare. And as a spare, he had his day in the sun, but he's just going to get less and less important over time. And then combine that with all the stuff going on with Meghan, I'm sure the little things she whispered in his ear constantly about how he was better than his brother, how miserable she is, how awful the royal family is, the media, all these sorts of things. I'm sure that was just driving him absolutely bonkers. And things just go downhill from there, and they just don't seem to get any better. At any events, Harry looks strange oftentimes. On the red carpet for their human rights thing, Harry isn't smiling in the slightest. In fact, he looks, I would dare say, almost odd. Of course, the most misery we saw him in was at the UN, where he was forced to give this little speech, which everybody knew was a bit ridiculous and that he was goaded into doing that by Meghan. And nobody was in the room and he just looked silly. And he felt it too. And of course, probably one of the biggest ego blows was going to the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, where he was very deliberately sat in the back. They had to force Beatrice and Eugenie to move to get Harry inside. And I'm sure that was one of the first times in his life he really felt the distance, because I think even things got a bit darker, you could say, or even more negative after the passing of Her Majesty the Queen. And then the smiles really start being hard to come by. Even looking through pictures of the Invictus Game, does he smile? Yes, he does. But it just doesn't even seem to reach his eyes that much. He just doesn't seem that enthusiastic. In fact, one of the most enthusiastic pictures I saw was him and a dog and Meghan. And I was like, I think he's more smiling about the dog than he is Meghan. Even the Ukrainian woman who was in his documentary, he just can't quite seem to really smile. And I think too, what becomes really, really evident over time is that Meghan over smiles. Meghan overdoes it, Harry underdoes it. And because of that, they look even more like they're not on the same page. That was one of the things that always drove me nuts, is that Meghan always smiles. And yes, that's a good thing. Not saying that's necessarily totally a bad thing, but she smiles so stinking hard and manic-like sometimes. You know, the vein literally in the top of her forehead starts to come out. But it also makes Harry look, by comparison, even more miserable because she's smiling so hard. So you're wondering, why are these two people obviously at the same event doing the exact same things? One seems to be having the time of her life and the other one is comparatively absolutely miserable. And I think that's something that I always said, like, Meghan needed to work on that, like tone it down, because Harry can't tone it up and you guys look like you're on two separate pages. And perhaps the biggest thing is looking at Harry and Meghan's placement in the theater at Jamaica. So they were sat in row where it clearly was not the VIP section. There was somebody actually already in their row. They looked very, very casually dressed. You have Harry and Meghan. Meghan in her ridiculous bespoke Carolina Herrera ball gown skirt that was too long for no reason. She has to like puff it out to sit properly. And they're going there, they're sitting down, they look confused, much like they did at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee when they were sat in the second row behind Beatrice and Eugenie. And you can also tell, Royalty pointed this out, is that there's water bottles in the row behind them because the row behind them was clearly the VIP. And how much misery are you in? You flew all the way to Jamaica to still be unimportant. They still didn't make it to the VIP section. They're waiting for the rest of the theater to join them instead of what they had at the Lion King premiere. Everybody else, all the stars arrived ahead of them. They got to walk the red carpet alone. And then they got to go in and have the most prime seats in the house, with everybody giving them a standing ovation as they were the last ones to arrive. But in Jamaica, everybody was sitting. Nobody cares because they are cosplay royals. They have become a bit of a joke, and they're just looking for any and every opportunity to have a little bit of time in the limelight. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.